The message sat there, glowing on his phone screen, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment to breathe again, typing. That single word pulsed on the screen like a heartbeat. After a full year of silence, after 365 days of nothing but old memories and unanswered questions, she was typing. Ryan's thumb froze above the glass. He didn't blink, afraid the tiny dots would disappear if he moved. A minute passed, then another, and then, finally, the message appeared. Hey, sorry for replying late. Just 7 words. He stared at them as if they were sacred, something fragile that might shatter if he exhaled too hard. His chest tightened, the room around him blurred until only the glow of his phone remained. The first message had been his, a simple, "I hope you reached home safe." He'd sent it after their last night together, 2 friends who were almost more, sitting by the lake with city lights trembling on the water. Aisha had smiled that night in a way that made him believe she might stay, but she hadn't replied. Not that night, not the next morning, not any of the days that followed. At first he thought she was busy, then hurt, then angry, then maybe gone. He kept texting, short messages that turned into long paragraphs, then into nothing. Eventually he stopped. The last thing he'd sent was a photo of the lake at sunset with just 2 words, "Miss this." The message delivered, never seen. Days became weeks, weeks blurred into months. Rayan tried to move on. He changed jobs, cities, routines, but every time his phone buzzed, he still hoped it might be her. He dated someone new for a while, Lena, who loved jazz and had the kindest laugh, but even she noticed the shadow in his eyes. "You look like you're waiting for someone," she'd said once, not accusingly, just softly. He'd smiled and changed the subject, because how do you explain waiting for a message you're not sure will ever come? Exactly 1 year later, on a quiet evening in October, the city smelled of rain. Ryan sat by his window with a cup of black coffee and the weight of an unfinished conversation. He scrolled up through the old chat, hundreds of messages from him, none from her. Then he typed one last thing, almost like a goodbye. "It's been a year. I still don't know why you left, but I hope you're okay." He didn't expect an answer. It was just a thought he needed, to send out into the void, a way of telling himself he'd tried. Then he placed the phone face down, turned off the lights, and let the rain fill the silence. Minutes later, the phone vibrated. "Hey, sorry for replying late." Rand's heart thudded once, heavy and confused. The dots blinked again. "A lot happened this year. I didn't know what to say back then." He swallowed hard. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. "I thought you forgot about me," he typed. 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. I just didn't know how to explain why I left." Aisha's world had fallen apart that same week a year ago. Her father had been diagnosed with cancer, aggressive and fast. She'd withdrawn from everyone, too afraid to speak, too tired to pretend. She'd meant to reply to Ryan's message, but every time she opened the chat, she couldn't find the right words. Days slipped by, then weeks, then months, and by the time she was ready, the silence had become too loud to break. So she stayed quiet until tonight. "My dad passed away 6 months ago. I moved back home to help my mom. I wanted to text you, but I didn't want pity. I'm sorry. I had no idea." He stared at the screen, guilt swirling through him like smoke. All those nights he'd cursed her for ghosting him, all those times he'd told himself she didn't care. It had all been something else entirely. "You were one of the few people who made me feel seen. I couldn't face losing that too. You never lost it." There was a pause. Then another message popped up. "Do you still walk by the lake?" Rayan smiled faintly. Every time it rains, they talked for hours that night about everything and nothing, the kind of conversation that only happens between people who once loved and never said it out loud. When dawn touched the edges of the sky, Aisha wrote, "Thank you for waiting, even if you didn't mean to." He didn't reply right away. He just stared at the message, feeling something shift inside him. Waiting, that word again. He'd spent a year waiting for her reply. But somewhere along the line, the waiting had changed him. He'd learned to live without the answer. A few weeks later, they met again. The same lake, the same wooden bench, a little more worn down by time. Aisha looked thinner, her eyes softer but older somehow. She wore a gray scarf and carried a paper cup of tea. Rayan didn't speak at first. He just watched her breathe in the cold air, watched the way her fingers trembled slightly as she held the cup. "It's strange," she said finally. "Everything looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same." "Yeah," he said quietly. "We aren't the same either." She smiled, small, fragile, but real. Maybe that's a good thing. They sat in silence, listening to the water and the distant sound of traffic. For a moment, it felt like time had folded in on itself, bringing them back to the night everything stopped. I read all your messages, she said after a while, every single one. He laughed softly. I sent too many. No, she said. You sent just enough to remind me I mattered. As the sky darkened, she told him about the last year, the hospital nights, the loneliness, the fear. He listened, not interrupting, just letting her words fill the empty spaces. Then she asked the question he'd avoided for a year. Did you ever hate me for disappearing? He thought about it. No, I hated the silence, but I never hated you. Something in her eyes melted at that. She looked down, blinking hard. You always were kinder than I deserved. Rayan wanted to say I missed you or I loved you or I still do, but the words felt heavy, outdated. The year between them had built walls that couldn't be broken with three little words. Instead, he said, I'm glad you replied. When he got home, Rayan opened their chat again. The messages from that night glowed softly against the dark screen. He scrolled to the top, to that first, I hope you reached home safe. And for the first time in a year, he didn't feel the urge to rewrite the ending. He typed one last message. Take care of yourself, Aisha. Always. Then he set the phone down and turned off the light. Some messages don't need replies. Some stories find closure, not in words, but in understanding. In her small apartment, miles away, Aisha sat by her window with her phone in her lap. Rayan's last message glowed gently. She whispered the words aloud, as if saying them back to him. Take care of yourself. She saved the chat, not to reread, but to remember that someone had once cared enough to wait. Then she opened a new note in her phone and typed, if someone waits for you, don't make them wait forever, but if you do, at least come back honest. She hit save and closed her eyes. Rayan was walking by the same lake when a message popped up. It's raining. Thought of you. He smiled, pocketed the phone, and kept walking. The message was warm, light, free of apology. Sometimes love doesn't return to stay. Sometimes it just returns to say, thank you. He looked up at the sky, rain dripping from his hair, and whispered, 365 days later, and I'm finally okay. They didn't end up together, and maybe that's the point. Not every story is meant to be a love story. Some are meant to be lessons in patience, forgiveness, and timing, because sometimes the message you've been waiting for arrives when you no longer need it, and that's how you know you've healed.